Record on this computer. Okay, we are recording. Welcome everyone to today, all about building your workflows for your next group program or mastermind launch, or I mean, quite frankly, even if you don't run a group program, this is helpful. Any sort of talking about client experience and building out that workflow is super important. Just checking the chat. Be back in a minute. My nephew is screaming. No problem. That is life. So yeah, today is all about really figuring out what those steps need to be in that experience to offer a good experience to your clients for your group program. Has anyone, and Joanna's stepped away for a minute, that's okay. Has anyone been a part of a group program before, like a coaching program? Ava, you're nodding. Everyone's nodding. Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So what went well and what didn't? So I guess when it comes to client experience, I always like to ask people or turn the question around when they're building their own workflows, because we've all been consumers at one point or another. We've all purchased something and we've all had positive experiences and we've all had really shitty experiences, and kind of buyer's remorse and regretted the buy. So when you think back to your own experience, whether it's been a coaching program one-on-one or a mastermind program or group program, does anything come to mind about what you enjoyed about the experience you were a part of, or anything that you kind of were like, well, I probably wouldn't do that myself? What comes to mind? Ava, you're like, yes. Yes, there's
A
definitely.
lot. I've had people that were just like, thank you for your money. And then I never heard back until the day of like, oh, we kick off today. So here's all your links all of a sudden. And our session is like in an hour and a half. So hope you can be there. Then I have had, God bless her heart, like sending me 10 emails all to prep me. And that was just a little bit too much. And then I've had like the just perfect of, it's actually similar to a collective of just like, here's the manual of everything, here's like our Slack and where you can go, but all in one email, which felt so good of just not having to constantly bombarded.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And I mean, a lot of that comes down to just finding the right level of communication, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Diane.
Like for me, it was the opposite. I recently joined a beta test with, oh my God, I hope she will never find this video.
You don't have to say names if you don't want to.
With someone.
Yeah.
But I never received any notification. There is this Facebook group where everybody is chatting, but I don't like to be a lot in social media. So I lost every kind of conversations about when this program was starting or where to go, etc. So a couple of days ago, she reached out to me telling me, well, I saw that you never joined the website and you didn't go through the units. So what's happening? And I was like, well, I never receive anything. So I see that there are people commenting on Facebook, but I don't follow. So I don't know. So that actually brought me down, and I haven't been back to the program because I feel like I lost it. I just didn't get the conversation or the communication that I needed.
Totally. And I think that, I mean, what you said too is, even though she's reached out since then, it's that key time in onboarding where that information needs to be shared to fully prepare people and get them excited to carry the momentum throughout the rest of the program, right?
Yeah, it was since December.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks guys for sharing. Yeah, similarly, I mean, I've been a part of positive and negative experiences with group coaching programs. Joanna, did you have anything to add about, hello, about, and I know you stepped away, so I'll recap. I was just checking in to see if anyone's been a part of group programs and what that experience was. No? Okay.
Never been.
Okay, that's totally okay. Basically, to recap, everyone was just kind of saying that it really came down to communication, whether it was a positive or negative experience. Either way too much information overload, not enough information, so they didn't even know what was going on, or the perfect amount where it was very clear about the next steps and kind of working people through that process, which is what we're going to talk about today. Okay. Has anyone launched a group program before?
Nope, but I want to.
Okay, good. Diana, you're nodding. Have you, how was that experience?
I liked it. However, it wasn't that successful. There was not many people subscribing, and I believe part of that was the lack of information outside, like the way that I was partnering with another person, and we were a very good team. However, the communication as well, the way of passing the information to other people to get them engaged, to know that is what's going to happen. I don't know where exactly we were lacking of in that moment, but it wasn't successful. People didn't show up, and we had like 5 people instead of the 20 that we were targeting, you know.
Got you. Okay. Okay, yeah. Great. Thank you for sharing that as well. So I guess we'll jump in. I basically have 3 steps to building a positive experience, and really, I mean, any experience, let alone for a group program. But what we'll talk about when we map it out is some specific things that I've seen and have experienced, and some ideas for group programs as well, to just spark some ideas for you. For anyone watching the replay, just briefly, most people know me who sign up, but if you don't, I'm Sarah Williams. I'm the founder of Rebel Office, and I'm here to help you all things systems and streamlining and scaling. And our personal approach is through simplifying what we can, leaning on tools and systems as much as you can, to have the most reach and the most positive impact and experience. I'm big on experience. I'll probably say that word a lot, but let's jump in anyways. So 3 steps to building your onboarding experience for your next group program or mastermind launch. Mapping it out. I always recommend putting pen to paper, or if you use a tool like Miro, I'll share my screen in a couple of minutes, or a couple of 30 seconds, and we'll walk through it. Step number 2 is building the assets beforehand. So if you can map out all of the different things that you need before, or while you're launching, but ideally before, I always find having your workflows kind of in place and working before you start the launching process actually makes you more confident to sell, because you know that you're ready to onboard someone as soon as they say yes. So I always recommend doing it before, unless you have a tendency to kind of get stuck on perfection, and sometimes you just need to push yourself to like get it out there. Then sorry guys, then that gets that out there, and then you can build it as you go. But normally I recommend building out these assets ahead of time. So that's like contract templates and email templates and any sort of welcome package. We'll talk about it all. And then step number 3 is, sorry, let me just admit Rebecca here. And step number 3 is automating and streamlining. So of course, leaning on those tools, finding the right tools to do the jobs that you need. Hey, Rebecca, how's it going? I'm just going over the 3 steps to building your onboarding workflow. So mapping it out, step number 1, number 2, building the assets, and then number 3, streamlining and automating. So finding those tools, whether it's Honeybook, which you guys have heard me talk a ton about, or Dubsado, or there's so many different ways that you can build combinations. Of course, as I mentioned, I'm all about simplifying. So as few tools as possible to do as much as possible is kind of my goal, but it totally depends. I mean, on your budget, as well as just the capabilities that you need. If you need to use Calendly or Acuity to book calls instead of using Honeybook's scheduler or Dubsado scheduler, it really depends. And again, we'll talk about all of this. I'm just giving a super quick recap. I don't want to like overwhelm you with stuff right off the bat. But yeah, automating is step number 3. And that's really where it makes it a lot easier to onboard, and to really get your information out there and trust that you're offering a killer experience, right from the very get-go. Okay. So step number one, I'm going to share my screen and we are going to hop on over to my favorite tool, Miro. Has anyone used this tool before? Yes. Okay. Okay. Good. Woo, everyone. I love it. It's my favorite. So I've basically mapped out a couple of options and some different steps that we're going to talk about now. But when you're launching a group program, I almost always, and there's definitely different ways to do this. Like I said, if you have a tool like this, or if you can put pen to paper and like physically map it out, it makes it a lot easier to visually see the opportunities where maybe there's a step in there that isn't necessary, or maybe there's a step in there that's not in there that's missing. And when you go through it, now that it's actually visually out there and you're like, okay, that's not right, like that's not a good flow. If I was in that person's shoes, I would need this information next. So and maybe it's just because I'm a really visual person, but I find this really helpful. So what you would normally start with is your point of contact. So how do they reach out to you? In the case of a group program or mastermind program, normally there's an application form. You don't necessarily need an application form, but it's really helpful not only to curate and be really intentional about the people that you're bringing into your program, but it's also really good to create this sort of sense of exclusivity and really develop that. So I recommend an application form. If it's something, maybe you skip this entirely, you promote it, you send them to a sales page where they check out through a program like Thrivecart or like a checkout system, Samcart, any of those, then that's totally an option too. You can simplify this, but I want to expand this out as much as possible to show you guys as many kind of opportunities and cool features as possible. So when someone either contacts you or applies, ideally, then I always like to have an automated email that goes out right away just to acknowledge that the application was received. You might not be able to review the application right away. You might need 3 days or a week. Maybe you review applications on a weekly basis. That's okay too. But when someone applies or reaches out about something, it's always nice to just nurture that relationship a little bit, like they're putting themselves out there. So even just having an email that says like, hey, I received your application, I'm so excited to review it, we review applications on a weekly basis, I'll get back to you with next steps, and just keep it like super short and sweet. What you can also use that email for is to say, while you're waiting, make sure you head on over to Instagram and like say hi or something. Like you can have that reach for like another method of communication or connection. That's there, okay, there too. And then a lot of tools that we'll talk about, Honeybook, Dubsado, you can create a task that'll basically notify you to say like review their application. You might not need that. That's pretty basic. If you see an application come in, chances are if you're launching, you're going to be reading applications as they come in, because it'll be really exciting. But also you'll just be able to, or you'll want to set time aside to review applications. And then there's 2 tracks. Okay. You might never use the not a good fit track, but it's always good to have that as an option. And as your group program grows and as you run it multiple times, if you start to get, I know people who run group programs and have hundreds of applicants. Okay. Not to set expectations in a certain way, you might get 5 applicants. That's okay. That doesn't mean that there might not be one person in there that is really not a good fit. Even if they're willing to pay you, you know that somewhere deep in your soul, they're going to impact the culture of the group. Then it's always nice to have this kind of side option for where you can send people and you want to nurture them. So let's start with this first, is if there is someone that applies for your program and they're not a good fit, what do? You don't necessarily want to lose them as part of your community. You don't want to just like not acknowledge them or say like, hey, thanks for putting yourself out there, but like you're a loser, see you later. Like you don't want to do that. So there's a couple of options. Something I've done before is I'll have an email that goes out and says something like, based on your application, I'm not sure, or this program isn't a good fit for you right now. That said, if you disagree with me, feel free to book a call and we can discuss. What that does is it basically shows me that they're willing to fight to be in the program. So not only will that increase the conversion rate later on when you send them the contract and proposal and they're like, yeah, I mean, I've already showed you I want this, like, let's go, like I've reaffirmed it. And I lost my train of thought. Giving them an option to debate is a really nice way to continue that conversation, especially if their application maybe just didn't read right. Like maybe they didn't put information in there that you don't know about. So I like to offer that option. But another thing that you can do is upsell them or downsell them or cross sell them. So basically you can say, based on your application, this program isn't a good fit for you, but I think you would really like this course that I have, and link them there. So you can still nurture them and support them based on their application, but you can just provide a different way to work with you, sorry. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions about the not a good fit track, or any other ideas how you would like to maybe be let down nicely after an application for a program?
I definitely like the second option of offering something that is going to fit better with them instead of just making them fight for it. I feel like, well, it's their decision. If they feel they can join, I am not the person who is going to tell them that they can't.
Okay.
So I'd rather telling them maybe they would like to go to another program or choose another service, and from that, maybe that is going to help them move into the other level when they are going to be able to fit in this new program. So actually they are going to become the best client because they are going to hire me twice.
Absolutely. That's such a good point because, and I mean, you guys have seen me talk about it. The Social Bungalow talks about it a lot, that kind of ascension plan with your product suite. So you have like an entry level, and then, which is kind of like a prerequisite for the next level of your services or products, and then the next level. So Diana's absolutely right. If you redirect them to the entry point based on where they're at from their application, then it's basically going to prepare them to eventually circle back and come back to your program when they're ready. So that's a really nice idea and option as well. Okay. So then say you review an application and they're like, perfect. They're your ideal client. You're like, oh my gosh, yes, you're exactly who I want in this program. What happens? There's a couple of different options that you can do, or I guess, yeah, a couple too. So I've seen people do interviews as well. So they have an application and then they also do an interview. So it's basically just they phrase it as an interview, they position it as interviews, but it's really more of a discovery call where it gives you the opportunity to just kind of learn more about them and make them feel more involved and belong to something. But it also gives them an opportunity to ask any questions or tackle any objections before you send over the invoice and contract. So that's an option. So what you would do here is just have an email that's ready to go that says, cool. I mean, it's up to you. I would say cool, but you don't have to. Something like, I've reviewed your application. I am so excited for you to join us in this program. We do have a round of interviews. If you could please book your time here and send them there. Please bring any questions you might have about the program, since we'll have questions for you, or like make it friendly, but that's how you could kind of phrase that. You could also just, instead of positioning it like an interview, just say, hey, loved your application. Here's, if you're ready to go, just let me know no, maybe don't do that. I would actually do this, where if you're happy with their application, you would send them an interview, say, hey, great, so excited. I've attached a contract and invoice for you. A lot of systems now will put them together, so they have to pay and sign at the same time. But you can have a section in that email that says, if you have any questions that you want answered before signing, schedule a quick call here. And you can have that booked in your scheduler, like your scheduling app for, I wouldn't do any more than 15 minutes. You want it to be super quick and focused and effective to just tackle those objections, and make sure that both of you are happy with joining the program. So that can happen. And then again, if they do go this route and book a call, just remind them to circle back, and sign their contract and pay the invoice. Or you can send a follow-up after that call. Just kind of 1 second. So we can go like this. So it can go here. Say you send that email and then this, then you would basically resend this with a quick, hey, it was so great to chat. I'm so glad we addressed those concerns you had. I've reattached the contract and invoice. So instead of just saying, go find that email, you can have that next level of communication. Okay. And then when it comes to your invoice, something to think about is if you, and again, it depends on your pricing plan, but when it comes to mapping out what your group program actually is going to be, or your mastermind program, whatever you call it, I'm just going to call it a group program for now. But it's always nice to have a couple of payment options, whether it is a pay in full option. I mean, I've seen group programs over $10,000 with a pay in full option. So there's no real, you don't need to offer a payment plan, but recommended for accessibility and general sustainability for income for you as well. Or you can, like I said, have some payment options where maybe the first invoice is a $1,000 deposit or $500 deposit just to lock in their spot. And then the remainder of the balance happens over the duration of the program. So there's so many different combinations that you can do when it comes to payment. But all of the systems that we'll talk about at the end here have this option to set up a payment schedule that works based on what they choose. Another thing too, just to keep in mind, I was just chatting with one of my clients who's setting up or launching a mastermind. You can have a VIP option as well. So you can do like the regular program that maybe has a pay in full and a payment plan option, but then you could have a VIP option where it's a little bit more or a lot more, up to you, but they maybe get one-on-one calls with you, or they maybe get exclusive access to other partners. I partnered with a performance, they're counselors, but they do like mental performance for like high performing people. So one of the options was they get access to a consultation with them. So it doesn't necessarily need to be your time, but having a VIP option is sometimes nice, a nice little cash injection as well. And again, it doesn't need to be directly associated with one-on-one work with you, but food for thought. Okay. So they've signed the contract, they've paid the deposit. Now what needs to happen? What information do they need so that as soon as they buy from you, they've parted monies with you or to you, they need confirmation. They need something that's instant and immediate recognition for the fact that they've now invested in you. Have you ever bought anything where you've parted with your money and then you don't know if it went through or what happens next? I definitely have. That's why I bring it up all the time, where I don't want to be left wondering what to do now that I've just paid, do you know? So having really clear next steps, I think, is super important, and that's why I emphasize it a lot. So when it comes to your group program, define what those next steps are, figure out what that actually looks like. Do they have to be invited to a community, whether it's a Facebook group or a Slack group? Do you have a call schedule where they can input calendar invites into their calendar so that they don't miss calls? Do they have to complete any other additional information for you to, oftentimes in questionnaires, you might ask for their mailing address if you want to mail them a little gift, or if you want to dive deeper into what they might be struggling with because you cater the program to specific frustrations that people are having that you've joined into the group. So start to think about what that information looks like that you need once people are actually in the program before it starts. Okay, so this is like that weird middle quiet ground that you're busy recruiting. You need to make sure that people who have already joined are being nurtured during that time so that they're not sitting there twiddling their thumbs and not having any idea what's going on. So what this looks like could look like a couple of things. What Ava was saying at the beginning about how she basically got 10 emails in a row with a whole bunch of different onboarding information. Yeah, tighten it up a little bit. You want to make it kind of like one very clear email, 1 to 2 at most, clear emails that they can go to find the information they need for the program. So whether it is an email that gives them access to a password protected page on your website with all the information they need, or whether it is a email with a PDF that's like a welcome package that has a link to all of this stuff. It can kind of look like a whole bunch of different things. Or if there's any information that has to come from a third party, like if you have to grant them access to like a course platform, or invite them to like a Slack group or a Facebook group or whatever, then in an email that is automated, we'll talk about it. Once they sign, basically this welcome email could say something like, you'll receive emails from this place and this place, so keep an eye out for those. And this is the rest of the information that you need. So if there is any information coming from a third party source, make sure that they know about it to watch out for, so that it's not confusing when they get it. Again, you want to think of like the smallest, most annoying little details and map it out as best you can in the most clear format that you can. Does anyone have any questions about that next steps part? Good? Okay. And then of course, once you've given next steps and everyone's in the community and you've got the call schedule, and maybe you do an orientation call before any of the real programming starts, maybe you just have a kickoff call that goes over all of the information that you've already given them, and introduce everyone and get the group together. Then programming begins. So again, when you're mapping out we're getting outside of onboarding now, but just to think about if there's any sort of assets that you need to prepare for yourself to deliver the program content, whether it is on a course platform like Podia or Kajabi and you need that prepared, or whether you have regular homework that you need to turn into PDFs to deliver, having as much of that ready up front never hurts. But I know a lot of people also will build as they go and do it week by week, especially for the first round. That's okay too. It's just something to think about, and at least to start mapping out what those assets to deliver might actually be. But that's just a preparedness thing. I want to touch super briefly on exceeding expectations. I love surprising people with extra things, just to kind of boost the experience a little bit. And this could look like a whole bunch of different stuff. For exceeding expectations, it could happen at the very beginning as like a welcome gift, or it could happen halfway through as like a midway, we're almost there. Or for example, and again, I'm talking about gifts and I'll give you some other examples that aren't gifts after, but I got this literally today in the mail, so it's super relevant. I'm in a group mastermind program with Melissa Griffin, and she asked us about a month ago now what our word was for the year. And I said aligned, because I want to find abundance through alignment. So she got everyone's word printed on a key and mailed out the key and said that everyone already holds the key to achieving what they want for the year. So it's like, it's very aligned with the program. Okay. Like it has to be relevant. But it's very her style. It's very on brand. And that it is. It was actually so sweet. It was really nice to receive today, and no one knew about it. So that's kind of a nice surprise. And that's a way to wrap up the program, because we've been working for 6 months together to build these tools to be able to achieve what we want. Anyways, okay, so that's an option. Other ways to give value could be something as simple as giving them access to bonus content or bonus resources, stuff that you've already created that you can add on just to say, here, you're here. I'm so glad that you're here. I want to make sure you have everything you need to succeed. I've prepared these other resources. I'm giving you access that you have access to for the duration of the program. So that's another option as well. It doesn't need to be a monetary gift, but it can be resources that you've already created. It could be something as simple as sharing a book list with people, or creating a playlist for people. Like, it's more about creating that environment, and really going above and beyond in whichever ways you can think of, or that make sense within the program and within your own business. So those are just a few examples. Does anyone have any other examples of exceeding expectations? Or ideas, not examples?
I was typing it. I don't know why. Discounts for the next program, maybe.
True. So that's more on the offboarding side, but absolutely, if you run through a program with someone and then, or do a group program, have in your mind that in order to sell your next group program, any alumni in this program get a 25% discount on the next program. Another one, like for example, with the program I'm in now, or that's wrapping up now, but people who have been in the program are invited to be affiliates for the program, and like it's a really nice commission for that. So you can really start to think about, not necessarily in the onboarding and delivery, but also what happens when the program's done. How can you continue that relationship? How can you, what's the next step for them? And you can start to find opportunities to kind of exceed their expectations there as well. Okay. Okay. So once you've gone through and like step by step nitpicked everything that happens, so like when you're at this cool let's go stage and you want to do interviews, for example, say that's the direction you want to go, then when you're breaking this down, 1 second, then have the step where you send the email, invite to interview, and then the next step is client books interview. And then the next step is interview happens. So you really want to break it down as much as possible, because this next step, we need all these different steps visible in order to see what assets we need to actually build and have available during that time. So on that note, once you've fully mapped it out and you have a visual representation of the workflow, then I want you to come all the way back up to the top and start to map out or flag what you actually need to create in order to build this out. So for here, if there's a form to apply, okay, well, I need the form. And then for the email, you need, I mean, you can flag the ones that are specifically emails, you can just tag a different color because that's pretty obvious. So you have the application form, you have this email template, you have this email template, you would have some over here as well. And then, for example, for the client to book the interview or to send this email, technically, you would need the scheduler link. So whether you use the scheduler within the program that we're going to talk about soon, or if you use a program like Calendly or Acuity, you would need that built in order to even create this as a template. So that's basically why it's kind of important to think about, okay, what needs to be built and what's the best order to build it in. Normally, it's always good to create these first and then go and do emails at the end, because most likely the email has links to the things that you're going to be creating. So then similarly, you would go all the way down here. You might have a welcome PDF or a brochure, or in Dubsado and Honeybook, there are options to create like a virtual or a digital brochure PDF that makes it really easy to share information. You might have an onboarding questionnaire. Okay, well, I'm gonna make sure that that questionnaire is built so that when I go to create the email template to ask for that additional information, then I have that questionnaire to link to. Does that make sense? Just kind of flagging and creating a bit of a to-do list for yourself for what to build before we go to the next step. Any questions about that? What's nice about this too is that, yes, this is work up front, right? Like actually taking the time to build this stuff, it takes time. But once it's built, it becomes a lot easier. I mean, one, it'll save you time because it's done properly, and don't get me going on just how what the ROI is on client experience in general. But it's also super easy to replicate for the next group program and for literally everything else that you do. Yeah, Ava, did you have a question?
Yes. Would you do like a 30-minute chat in the next first steps? Like if they're jumping into a group program, or if somebody's jumping into like the Rebel Office Collective and it's your first time meeting them and you don't really know them, or just in general, like doing a 30-minute chat just to get to know each other?
As a, like, with everyone in the group, or between you and the person that you're bringing into your program?
Like with you and the person that you're bringing into the program.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally up to you. It depends too on the level of investment. You might not necessarily, if it's a relatively low tiered group program, then you might not have the time to commit to doing that. But for a higher investment, absolutely. I mean, one, it shows you care. Like, you obviously want to learn about the people coming into your program so you can support them. So by all means, yeah, absolutely hop on a 30-minute call. I've seen people as well use it as like a fast action bonus. So when you're launching, say if you apply by Friday, you lock in a 45-minute consultation with me, right? And then that gives you the opportunity to dive deeper into their business. They get value add because they get one-on-one time with you, and you're also learning about how to cater the program content to address issues that you learn about in that consultation, right? So that's an option too. Does that answer your question? It's really up to you. You can make this as kind of personal or as hands-off as you want. But again, normally the more money, the more hands-on it probably has to be at the beginning. Okay. Okay, so we've mapped it out. We've figured out our to-do list of tools to build and templates and all that fun stuff. Now, when it comes to actual systems and making this as, I don't want to say as hands-off as possible. I always like to have touch points throughout and keep a bit of control over it. But depending on how big your group grows, it might need to be pretty hands-off. So finding a tool that's going to automate or streamline as much as possible for you is really important. So the two that I normally talk about are Dubsado and Honeybook. I personally use Honeybook, and I know that a couple of people here do as well. But we can go through both options, and I can show you the behind the scenes. Is anyone right now leaning one way or the other, or is looking at any other tools, or not even thinking about tools yet? Where's everyone at when it comes to the systems part?
I'm already using like HoneyBook and ClickUp and all that jazz, so I think we're on the same page.
Perfect. Good. Okay, I want to show you guys my HoneyBook.
Yeah, I recently switched to HoneyBook after
I know.
maybe Sarah's influence a little bit, but mostly just the ease of HoneyBook and how like pretty it is. Like that mattered to me.
Yeah.
More the ease, but also the pretty too. But just like, can I set it up myself without wanting to like rip all of my hair off? Yes. Could I say that for Dosado? Not really.
Yeah, it definitely has its pros and cons for both. Dubsado from an automation standpoint is better than HoneyBook. HoneyBook is more manual, it requires more touch points. But do I think the user experience is better? Yes. Do I think it's easier to use and less overwhelming? Yes. So there's definitely some options. I can show you Dubsado as well, just so you can compare. But in HoneyBook, here in this template section, is where you would build out all of this good stuff. So you would drop in your contract template. So for example, this group program, it auto-populates based on the client. It has all the deliverables included here, investment and payment, it's all in here so that no matter who comes on, they get the same agreement. Okay. Proposals in HoneyBook are technically the invoice and contract set together. So it's different. It's not like your traditional proposal where you would be proposing a project or something to a client. In HoneyBook, that's just the word contract and invoice together. So a proposal template in here that I've created pulls that contract I just showed you from the contract section, puts it in here, and maps a specific payment schedule. So for example, here it shows the down payment due upon receipt. So whenever I send it, that down payment's due. And then when the program kicks off, first payment's due, and then 1 month after, next payment's due, second month after, next payment's due. So you can set that payment schedule to happen automatically. What's nice about HoneyBook is that when someone pays via credit card, it will charge their credit card the next time without you having to chase payment. So that's probably one of the nicest features, is that it doesn't just send an invoice and hope that people pay it. It basically makes sure that that payment comes in on that date, unless, for example, there's not enough room on their credit card. And I think there's an option to deactivate that on the client side. Not totally sure, can't remember from the last time I ran through a HoneyBook workflow from the client side. But I'm pretty sure there's a way for them to choose to keep it manual, but I've never had that happen. Most people just say on this date, yeah, I agree to be billed that amount. So that's nice as well. And then questionnaires. So in here, let me see. So for example, welcome to the Abundance Accelerator, or whatever your program's name is called. First things first, give me your mailing address, and then you can dive into further areas. What areas would you personally like to narrow your focus on? So again, that'll adjust, I guess, your programming content. Sorry, I'm just reading Diana's message. I'm with a foot in with HoneyBook, so this will be a great demo. Yeah, absolutely. And let me know too if you haven't signed up for HoneyBook yet, but you want to. I can give you 50% off your plan. Okay, so then, yeah, you can build out your kind of onboarding questionnaire or anything once they've accepted, or once you've accepted them, however you want to position it in your mindset. Brochures is what I want to show you. So for a welcome package, like I mentioned, you could do a PDF, you could do just an email with bullet points and links to everything that they need, so it's all in one place. You can also build out a brochure. In HoneyBook, you can also, I think Dubsado has brochures as well. I've seen a couple people do it a few different ways. But for example, this wasn't finished yet, I don't think. So it might look a little weird, but the following information is a guide to the program. In this guide, we cover yada, yada, yada. Mark your calendars for the orientation call. Here's the group schedule. Here's your one-on-one sessions with Sarah, who was part of the program. So it really depends on what your program is that you're offering. How to join the Slack community, how to actually use Slack, and then any sort of bonuses or add-ons that they got. So you can really build this out however you want, but what's great about if you do that mapping out first is that you have a really clear picture of the information they actually need to access through a document like this, if that's the route you wanted to go. Okay. Something, I don't know if I can show you guys this. HoneyBook's releasing a new feature called Flows, and it's not fully public yet. I've been beta testing it for a while and they're still working out a few kinks. But basically this is going to replace brochures. So for example, let's look at a super quick example. I'm not sure what this one looks like. But you can basically have like a welcome video that you can embed on a page. You can work through the different pages, what to expect. So it's basically like a multi-page brochure. You can have questionnaires embedded here. You can have I don't think you can have schedulers yet. They basically plan on having, oh, there we go. Let's schedule our first chat. So you can have a page that links to your scheduler. Flows, because it's still in testing mode, they are eventually going to have contracts and booking links set into this as well. But just something to keep in mind that it's just their kind of approach on automating a little bit more and making workflows a little more accessible. But I'm not sure if everyone can see those yet, but I think people have started to be able to. So then when it comes to workflows, like I said, the HoneyBook is not as customizable when it comes to workflows as Dubsado. So it kind of stops after a certain point. There's only so much you can do with a workflow in terms of triggers. But what I like to do is that when someone completes the form, it automatically creates a task for me to review the application. And then there's two options. First they get the application received email. So like I talked about, they get the, hey, we got your application, thanks so much, we'll let you know. And I set it to be 3 hours after they apply for the form, just so that it feels a little more natural, versus just getting it right away. And then they know it's obviously not me on the other end. So I like to just add in a little bit of human elements there. And then I have two options that need approval before sending, so that it's basically me coming in here and approving the one I want to send and deleting the one I don't. So here it's either your application is accepted, here's next steps, or application denied. And that we've already chatted about. So those are that's how you would set up a workflow. Unfortunately in HoneyBook, let me see if I can edit. Oh, right here. At this point, it's not like, okay, once it's accepted, you can't send the contract or proposal. You're pretty much confined to an email that you can have links to, a questionnaire or a brochure, but you can't send the next step, which would be the proposal yet, unfortunately, but they're working on it. Whereas in Dubsado, you can automate literally the entire workflow. It's the triggers are a lot more robust. I can actually, let me pull it up. And I'll just go over it super quickly. Dubsado's rebranded. That's nice. Okay. So similar to HoneyBook, Dubsado has a templates area where you would come in and add in your contracts, add in your questionnaires, the contact forms would all go here. I've seen a lot of people, how I showed you the brochure in HoneyBook, they've built out a document as a questionnaire that they've just drag and dropped, put in their own branding through images, and you can still make it look pretty nice, but have all the information directly in here. So it's just another file that they send. It just goes under one of these different sections. And additionally, for emails, you can add any sort of prepped email templates, so it's super easy for you to send and build out your workflows once you've populated any emails that you need throughout the experience, like this invite to an interview or this application receipt notice, those types of emails. And then when it comes to workflow, this is where we start to see the difference between HoneyBook and Dubsado. You can attach it to a payment schedule if you've mapped one out for your program that maybe says 50% upfront and then monthly thereafter. Or you can just leave it and do it later. So for example, the action. So what you want to actually happen, there's way more options. You can activate your portal, you can send an appointment, you can start a whole new workflow, which doesn't make sense because you're starting this workflow. You can send an email or send a form, and that doesn't change no matter where you are in the workflow. These are always the options available to you. So if you have someone say, yes, I'm ready to go, then that next action could be send a form once they sign a proposal, or once they, that doesn't make sense, once they do something, that last step, then you can send the form that doesn't exist. Normally here you would select the proposal, and then select the email template from here, and it just automatically populates. It makes building the workflow a lot quicker and a lot more robust. And then say once they sign the contract, you can go ahead and send that welcome guide right away. So that's the nice thing, is that there's less touch points for you if you want to build it out fully. So yeah, does anyone have any questions about those two tools, or were there any others that you had looked at that you were thinking of that you weren't sure would make the most sense? That was a super quick overview of HoneyBook and Dubsado, but I just want to make sure you know like both options. And I talk about HoneyBook a lot, but there's definitely pros and cons to both. So it really depends on your business. No questions? Does anyone have any questions about mapping out their onboarding processes in general, or their workflows in general when it comes to their group program? Anything that we didn't cover on today that you want to ask or address, or you've seen someone do something and you're like, how does that work? Good.
No, but I do have a question regarding the forms.
Yeah.
I know that there's a way to embed the form into your website.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's from HoneyBook or another kind of tool, but I really like that idea of having the forms in HoneyBook and then having the opportunity to just embed them into my website.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, what's great about that approach is that if you have a sales page built out on your website for your program, and you want to keep your branding very streamlined, like you really want to focus on that, the aesthetic of your experience, which is another important part, then you can either embed the application form or contact form on the sales page at the bottom, or have a button going to like a sub, like for example, for our work parties, our like VIP day intensive service, we have our sales pages, and you go down, say this was for a group program, and you click on, okay, I'm ready to apply for this group program. Then you click on it and it goes to a sub page. So it's just like a /book or /apply. And then it takes you to a page that has the form embedded on it. So this is a HoneyBook form that's embedded on here. Depending on what your website builder is, almost every builder lets you embed HTML on a page unless you need to go to your web designer for that. But you would just come over to your contact form. I'll show you in Dubsado as well. But for this form specifically, it's the work party inquiry. You build it out, you build any of the fields that you want for your application form. I always recommend having a question too that says like, hey, this is the range of investment, or this is the investment of the program. Are you currently able to make that investment at this time? That's just like a really nice qualifier and a nice money check, especially if you don't advertise the price of the program on the sales page. It's always nice to maybe just give a range so that people don't have sticker shock when you get on the call. But that's also a preference thing. I know people who don't say the price at all up till the point when they're on a call after the person's applied and they're like, yeah, so like, how much money am I giving you for this? So that's totally up to you, but I always like to have that question. Anyways, so then you come over to publish and you just copy this code whenever it populates. So you just copy that, head on back over to your website and put in an HTML element and grab that in there. Okay, does that make sense? Even for Dubsado, I don't know where's my contact forms? If we create like a super quick form, say, okay, and hit share. Okay, then this is the same. So you would grab that code and embed it onto your website that has your branding and reference to your program, and it just fits a little better than sending them, say, to this form that isn't your domain, that just doesn't seem to apply right away or is relevant. It's not loading. There we go. So yeah, you can kind of build them out however you want, but I personally always embed it onto my own page. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I also had this question about, you were talking about Acuity and Calendly. So these are not functions from, like, HoneyBook doesn't have a scheduler. You have to use your own.
No, it
Or
does.
does it? Or okay.
It does, yeah. So that's why if someone's using a tool like Calendly or Acuity, but then they're also using Wave to send invoices and HelloSign to send contracts, then if you can do like all those things with one tool versus with 5, I always recommend going to a CRM. But yeah, let me just again quickly share my screen. They both have scheduler options. General consensus of the Dubsado one is that it's super frustrating. But we can go over those options. But you just come over to tools and scheduling in HoneyBook, and you can build out your different appointment types. So for example, say we create a new one, you can integrate with Zoom. So you would name what the title is. It'll create a Zoom link for you, put the duration. So for our work parties, they're 5 hours. And then you can put in any sort of instructions or mark your availability like you would in Calendly or Acuity. Any sort of minimum notice or buffer that you need around those calls. And then the confirmation. So what do they need to know? And you would just save and finish. So I guess in Dubsado too, here, let me show you. Somewhere here. So super similar, you would just work your way down the settings in the scheduler, set the duration type, time, any of your availability you can customize, any email, which most likely you wouldn't really need an email to send your scheduler. You would most likely just send them a link directly to the scheduler, but that totally depends on your workflow. The nice thing about the Dubsado scheduler that is similar to Calendly and Acuity is that you can attach a form. So when someone books with HoneyBook, you can't ask any additional questions. Whereas here, if you wanted people to apply for your program, but book a discovery call with you at the same time, then you would want to use a third-party service, because right now HoneyBook doesn't have that option. Yeah, unless you wanted to send it in 2 steps versus sending it, like you could get them to book and then send them a questionnaire, or vice versa. Or an email that sends a questionnaire but also has a link to your scheduler. Like there's ways around it. But if you want it all done at once, then you might need to look outside of HoneyBook for that. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? We're good. Okay. So yeah, I mean, just to recap again, always start with mapping it out. Make sure that you go through each step, and it's okay to jot down all your ideas and be as specific as possible, step away, and then come back and say, okay, where are the opportunities that I'm missing here, or what's not adding value? Where do I need to add more value? And just take your time with it and be really intentional with it. Because again, once it's built, if you're doing it right, then it's going to serve you for way longer than just this one group launch, because those people are going to become repeat buyers, and because you can repurpose it for programs in the future. So, and then once you map it out, identify what those assets are and take the time to build those out properly. Any templates, contracts, welcome brochures, questionnaires, literally anything. And then look to tools to automate it and streamline it and build that process the way that you need to. Okay. Well, happy group launching and mastermind launching and building out your group programs. Super excited. Like I said, this replay, Heather, I know you came halfway through, so I'll get this replay up on the platform, and it'll be available for a week. And then it'll go into our resource library in the mastermind, or in the masterclass archives. Okay. So if you have any other questions too, feel free to reach out to me. You guys have my email. I'm on the other end of it. So feel free to ask any questions, or if you want me to review your workflows, I'm more than happy to do that too. Okay. All right. Well, have a beautiful Wednesday night, depending on where you are in the world, and happy launching. Bye, guys.